Tuesday. Is that when they collect the trash? Mm-hmm. It's like a cookie cutter neighborhood. Hi guys, welcome to True Crime Rocket Science in Charlotte, North Carolina. I hope you guys are all well. Sorry about so many false starts. Are we going to do a live, aren't we? Well, yeah, we are. And we're going to go through quite a few cases in terms of this live. We're going to go through Chris Watts, JonBenet, Ramsey, Barry Morphew, and then also Gabby Petito. All of those cases kind of play out to some extent, to a greater or less extent in Colorado. Sharon says, "Where are you?" Didn't I say so? I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. If you want a better look at where I am, this is all courtesy of Laurie. It's quite a nice swanky pad, right? My bedroom is that way and so on. So it's quite a luxurious little spot. Definitely relaxing. It's nice having a proper desk where one can sort of spread out and spread your wings a little bit. Yeah, Murdo's Low Country. So we'll be heading that way. Marcel, good to see you. So did you guys catch that opening thing with the Watts home? Shall I play that again?
Your destination is on the right. So this trash truck
is in the way, but I'll just drive slowly. Rawia says, "I really miss your analysis." That's good to hear, Rawia.
Your destination will be on the right.
What day is today? Tuesday. Is that when they collect the trash? Can you guys hear the audio? I'm not sure if I want you to hear it, but can you hear it? That's a neighborhood.
Your destination.
So there's a very important clue right there. Just visiting the Watts neighborhood on a random Tuesday, and there's a very important clue right there. What do you think it is? What do you guys say? Okay, well, before I tell you what it is, let's go into a couple of some more footage from this. So we were driving in I'm with Gene Karras, by the way. We were driving in a Jeep Wrangler, which meant you could sort of go nicely off-road. And these were some of the things that we looked at in the neighborhood, in the Chris Watts neighborhood. And I'm sure you're well aware that Chris Watts was an oil worker, but what was quite ironic is that his neighborhood was sort of peppered with these oil, what's the word? Fracking pads, I guess. And so I took a couple of photos of them. And I don't know I don't know whether you guys have appreciated to what extent this formed a kind of political backdrop to the Watts story. You know, it sort of seemed to be in the background. Oh, the bodies were found on an oil site, and then you don't really hear too much more about it, right? But when you go there and you see just to what extent the tracking pads are all over the place, and to what extent the oil industry is a political factor, I don't think you can actually separate it from the Watts case. There was actually an explosion on the day that Chris Watts was sentenced. On that day. So I mentioned earlier that there's an important clue right in the beginning, the first video that I played you. And it's basically, we arrived randomly on a Tuesday, drove towards the Watts home, and then you heard me saying something. It's actually quite an important clue to this whole story. So I think that the swimming pool where Shanann and the kids swam is down that road. You can see it's early spring. We saw quite a lot of little children playing in the neighborhood, riding their bicycles. Seems like quite a carefree neighborhood, little dogs running around all over the place. But do you notice something that's going on right here? Right in front of you, going on right in the road. Do you notice something kind of obvious that's going on? So we're about to turn into Saratoga Trail. But before we do, let's just see what some of you guys are saying. Sally says oil companies' leases will affect everybody. Someone says fracking pads. I'm not getting the thing that I'm looking for. Mel says, I know a few things about the Chris Watts case because of you. Okay, well, anyway, so far you guys are still not quite there. Let's keep going. This is approaching the Watts home on Saratoga Trail. There you go. So let's just stop it right there. Can you see the line of, let's just go back a few seconds. You see the line of trash cans there, right? And, right, so that's right, Kerry, Elizabeth, Linda, you're right, they are cookie cutter houses. Letty, you're right. What did your Anne say? So Joan says, I've just joined in. So this is quite important. The garbage is collected on a Tuesday, right? Every Tuesday, the garbage is collected, right? What did Chris Watts do when he returned home on Monday midday? Jean, good to have you here. Let me say that again. So the garbage is collected every Tuesday. That's something we're seeing happening right here. We also, I asked the guy, do you come every Tuesday? He said yes. And we also saw garbage cans, some that had blown over. There's also a rain shower after Chris Watts gave his sermon on the porch, right? What is the significance of the garbage cans? Let's see how many of you guys know this case pretty well. So the question is, what is the significance of the garbage being picked up on Tuesday / garbage in general? Let's see how well you guys remember this case. Hi, Alina. Good to see you here. While you guys are thinking about it, I'll let some more of the footage go by. So on this drive-by, the house was right there. You'll see some chalk drawings on the over there on the platform, on the apron, and then on another drive-by, the garage was actually open. There we go. So glad you said that. Sonia Stanger says he threw evidence away, threw evidence in the garbage. Well, what garbage? Well, he threw evidence into the kitchen bin. Do you remember that? And that evidence thrown in the kitchen bin was actually intended to be taken out of the house by the very next day. But unfortunately for Chris Watts, the cops found that. So if the cops hadn't looked inside the kitchen bin, then that evidence would have been lost as well. Lisa Breck says, I'm still learning this case, but the garbage cans are obvious. Okay, so that's the first thing to mention. What Chris Watts put in the garbage bin in the kitchen. Is there anything else related to garbage? Is there any other garbage that's worth pointing out here? Just hold it like that so we're not recording. Yeah, just keep it focused on that thing. Keep it like so we kind of went, was it still playing? We kind of did a couple of rounds. We sort of looked at different spots. And what we found quite fascinating were there were areas that just have not, that are bare areas that have just not been developed, like this one. And it's if you think about how fast the development initially was expanding and then it just suddenly stopped. Why have they not developed this area? Why do you think that is? Okay, so I'm gonna try and address some of it. Otherwise, we'll be here for quite a long time. So the garbage in question is the kitchen garbage, which involved a pillowcase that had possibly mascara on it, possibly excrement. I think it was actually excrement. There were other little things in there as well, sachets and so on. We know that Chris Watts may have tried to poison Shanann or the girls or both with like lethal doses of OxyContin, but we found, or they found, those Thrive sachets in there as well. Also like a plastic cup. And I mean, you got to think, what did they drink that morning? What is the last thing that they sort of had to drink? So anyway, that's the one trash receptacle. The other thing that was in the trash was Shanann had ordered a book for Chris Watts. I think it was called Hold Me Tight, right? I think she'd ordered a book for herself and a book for him. And he'd thrown the book into the trash, unopened, thrown it into the trash. And that indicated to the investigators, to the police, what he truly thought about their relationship. You can imagine if the book was open at chapter 5 next to their bed with a bookmark in it and things underlined, then they would have gotten a sense that, wow, he is actually trying to work on his relationship. But that's another thing that was in the trash and should have disappeared the next day, Tuesday. But the police got there before that could happen. What else was in the trash? Well, there was a doll that I think Shanann had brought back. I'm not 100% on this. There was a doll in the trash as well, which I think may have come from Chris Watts' mother or something, and it was meant for one of the kids. I think that was the idea. Remember, he'd seen them. Chris Watts had seen his parents on the very last day, and then possibly didn't give the gift to his kids to prevent some kind of argument. Do you guys remember that? So that's another thing that was in the trash. But the big thing that I really wanted you guys to try and remember was something else regarding trash. I'm going to give you guys one last chance to try and remember it. Let's see if you do. Let's go through a couple more images here. There's a kind of a clue on screen right now. Okay, so that's quite a good question from Rawia. Do you think if Shanann miscarried, that he would not have committed the crime? I actually think that is right. I think if Shanann had lost the baby, because the baby was a sign to Nicole Kessinger that they were still in a serious relationship, or could have been a sign of that. There we go. Well done, Lainey. On his way back, this was Monday midday. On his way back from Roggan, he didn't go straight home. He went via Black Mesa Road, and there were still some houses under construction, and there were some big bins, and he apparently put something in those bins. It could have been toys, soft toys. I don't know if it was soft toys, but what I definitely think it could have been is one or two of the children's blankies. And that whole thing is quite a hard thing to address. Like if you were under the impression that the children died in the house, blankets wouldn't make a terrible amount of sense. You'd imagine more things like plastic bags, but if you assume that they were alive, then it would actually make sense that they went out there with their blankies. And so all the paraphernalia that they took with them, I believe that was thrown away. So kids' blankies. So that was thrown in the trash. And he knew that he wouldn't need to really get rid of it. It would be automatically gotten rid of by this service. And that is why, if you, a police officer, that's one of the things you're going to need to really get clarification. As someone who's not familiar with this area, what happens, what is kind of scheduled, right? Right, and I just found it really curious. It's something that I'd thought about before, but it was really interesting seeing the garbage disposal in action on a Tuesday. Do you guys agree with that? And that is just one of the benefits to being right there in the area. It's one of those little things that is kind of a big thing. Not there yet. Good to see you. That's right. That is a good point. You've got a good memory. Yeah, the children's blankets. That's why I say blankies. Okay. I'm not sure if there's too much more I want to say about this. Just that to me, there's a little bit of um, there's a bit of a similarity in the Chris Watts case and the Idaho students case. What I mean is, um, they both, I don't want to say politically sensitive, but they're both sensitive in the sense that I think there were certain people in Colorado that didn't want, in Colorado, note my words, there were people in Colorado that didn't want the Watts case to go to trial. Now, if you think about it, who would really have wanted the Watts case not to go to trial, right? It's not just one entity, it's two. It's at least two, right? And then if you take the Idaho students case, who do you think would prefer either that the case doesn't go to trial or that it's done in a secretive way if it does go to trial? Do you guys follow what I'm saying? So you're right. Well done, Joan and Alina. The oil companies really don't want to have people sticking their noses into the whole fracking thing and how close to the homes of fracking and how safe is it and what is in these tanks and can it really dissolve human bodies and this and that. Um, and that's the one thing. But then also Thrive, multi-level marketing companies, did they want to be exposed? Did they want people to talk about? Do they want to like find out literally how much income Shanann was making, right? And dealing with that kind of thing, which is typically very secret, right? Um, and you know that could have had a profound impact on both industries if there was sort of like full disclosure. So that's the one thing. And I mean, if you look at it, what was pretty amazing with the Chris Watts case was it was all over within like 4 months. It was August when it happened, and by November, everything done. And you know, there was a little bit more evidence that came out later and second confessions and so on, but everything was wrapped up with a little bow very early on. Also, we were caught by surprise the fact that um, wasn't it supposed to be a preliminary hearing and it ended up being a sentencing hearing? Do you remember that? And it sort of wrong-footed a lot of us, and some of us thought, could a plea deal be on the cards? And they were really trying to keep that secret. Another thing that's crazy about the Chris Watts case is Nicole Kessinger, once the most infamous person in America, arguably, she just disappeared. And some people say that actually she's still in Colorado. And anyway, that's another story. But I was saying to Jean, if you compare Nicole Kessinger, who some people thought may have been involved in some way, and Lori Vallow, who did kill her own children, or she was convicted of being having conspired to do that, and her ex-husband and her husband, and conspired to kill. And then you think, why is there none of that viciousness, that hatred of, you know, that sense of the most hated woman in America for Lori Vallow? Lori Vallow gets this incredible pass, and then she goes and marries this guy in Hawaii, you know, and it seems like the true crime community just shrug and say, yeah, well, she's a bit strange, she's a bit crazy. When Nicole Kessinger, people couldn't prove it. And you know, it wasn't like she killed her own boyfriend. And anyway, and you had none of that with Lori Vallow. Really strange. You also had none of that with Crystal Kenny, someone who was an accessory in the Patrick Frazee case. Also happened in Colorado, and also wrote a book about that. I just sort of find that um, sort of, I don't know, the way the true crime community can descend like a cloud of mosquitoes on a particular person. And then you say, well, what about that one? No, just really, is it because Lori Vallow was kind of older? Is it because of her belief system? Like, why does she get a pass but not Nicole Kessinger? I just found it quite strange. Or is it because of Nicole Kessinger's sort of attitude to sex, and that she was more willing to experiment. I don't know what was it. That's very good of you to say. Thank you very much. Toggle Tran, good to see you. Yeah, that's true. Well said. Okay, so yeah, that's also a very good point, that it was even more sensitive because Anadarko was wooing Occidental, and they wanted the highest possible price. And by the way, when the Watts case happened, the oil markets and the value of it started declining. And I think it was something like, it was around about February when everything had sort of subsided, that Occidental eventually did buy Anadarko. And a lot of people said it's one of the worst purchases in oil history, one of the most ill-conceived. And I wrote about that sort of stuff in my book, Two-Face, The Rape of Cassandra. And The Rape of Cassandra was really an allegory to the destruction of the landscape to some extent, and resources. Lainey says, I give Kissinger a pass. Okay, so let's look at some other images here. It really is a cookie cutter community. And it was really interesting hearing what Jean Karras was saying about some people that she knows with kids who live in that area, who have asthma and who have certain number of days off from school. Jean, can you reiterate that in the chat? Just that there is a statistical link between kids who live in certain areas and those sort of days off from school. So, we did notice that the ground was kind of like a mattress in certain areas. You can see how it's sort of subsiding. And when we were in the area, we spoke to some people who lived there, and that they said, one guy said he built his house, it subsided, and then there were massive cracks in the walls, and then they fixed it, and then it subsided again. So, he has a little bird's nest in the jack. You can see it's a very neat neighborhood. It seems like a very nice place to live. I'm trying to get to the statue of the Frederick statue. So I think this is an approach to the house where the garage may have been open. I was really surprised by how small the little camera was on the Trinastich side. I think the Trinastich home is currently up for sale. What's the other thing I want to mention? Just in terms of Pauline's comment there, what I find kind of interesting is how you had this terrible tragedy in the Watts home, and there was a period of limbo, and now the Watts home has been purchased by somebody else, and they didn't even change the paint on the outside. It's still the original color. I mean, they did paint the inside of the garage, and I'm sure they changed the decor of the girls, what used to be Cece and Bella's rooms. But you know, some people moved in there and they made it work for them, and there you go, right? Compare that to the situation in Moscow, Idaho, where they want to tear the whole house down. And my honest opinion is, don't tear the house down. Change some of the idiosyncratic aspects of the facade, put on a different coat of paint, and that's all you need to do. Because I sort of feel like when you tear something down, you almost concede that we are both vulnerable, and we are impotent in the face of evil, if that's the word. We can't undo the negative damage, the negative psychological damage, and I feel like we can. You, as I say, you make some idiosyncratic changes. You put a new coat of paint, can maybe change the number, but you don't need to demolish the whole structure, right? I feel quite strongly about it. I feel like you need to fight back against those negative feelings and so on, and kind of get over it. Meaning not forget about it, but get on top of it, manage it. You know, we need to find a constructive way of dealing with tears in the fabric of society, and the answer isn't that something that is torn you throw into the fire and let it burn and disappear. No, stitch it up and fix it, right? You guys agree? So it's just interesting if you compare the JonBenet Ramsey home, which we're going to get to in a moment, the Watts home, which has not changed whatsoever, and then the Moscow home, which has been boarded up and is about to be demolished. There's quite a difference in those three homes. So on our way out, Jean and I just basically thought we would just get on our way out, and then I noticed this statue on the circle. Can you see that statue over there? Let's do this. And then I just thought, well, let's take a closer look. By the way, we were driving the same vehicle that the attempt is made on Brandon Boudreau's life, and that's the kind of situation they had to take this wheel off, because you can't close. First of all, you can't open this window with the wheel on. And so conversely, once the window is open, you can't close it with the wheel in place. By the way, the vehicle I was driving until yesterday, well, actually until today, was a Honda CR-V, the same vehicle Kylie Rodney drove. So it's in this area that Alex Cox apparently was sitting when everything happened. And so they had to remove this wheel so that he could open and close this when he wanted to. Right? Can you see that? And so the question is, who was driving this vehicle when this happened? Was it Brandon's wife, or was it Laurie, or was it Chad? So anyway, back to this statue, and it's actually quite a beautiful statue. What do you think we're looking at here? What do you think we're looking at in terms of this sculpture? Guy seems a bit like he's squint-eyed in some ways of looking at it. Yeah, it's a miner. So can you see how clever it is? You live in a neighborhood, and its emblem is a miner. You know, and it's all about getting resources out of the ground, and how wonderful that is. And you've got this lovely little lamp that glows. Meanwhile, in your own neighborhood, you've got these pumping jacks, and so it's kind of if you ask me, is a kind of a mind fuckery that, oh, I really don't mind having them drill under the foundations of my home. You know, it's kind of making you like that idea. Did you agree with that? Brenda, I don't really think that that's really the answer, and you're going to see why. The Ramsey home, they're wanting 7 million for it, and I doubt whether they're going to get too much more than 2, because changing the shrubs doesn't change the house really, certainly not sufficiently. A lot of pictures of the same thing. Neighborhood watch. Yeah, toxic positivity. And I must say, I was so intrigued by this maple tree, just how the leaves look like fall leaves, and yet it's one of the only trees that when the new leaves come out, they actually start off bright red and then they turn green. I just thought it was quite pretty and quite hard to photograph as well. Anyway, that's that. So it's definitely a pretty neighborhood. I wouldn't mind living there other than those fracking pads, to be honest. But the other thing is, there's nothing nearby. There are no shops in that neighborhood. There are no stores. And in fact, the nearest sort of spot that we came to, Jean and I, was a I think an Exxon gas station, and that is exactly where the employee said that Chris Watts stopped there regularly. He was a regular, and she said that the police thought that something was going on with her daughter because he gave her money, in the CCTV. And of course, that was when he was looking for change for his babysitter. But the police thought it might be that he was dealing in drugs or that he was sleeping with somebody else or something like that. Anyway, just a couple of. So this was us driving to that Exxon, and well, towards that Exxon. The reason the sky is that milky gray color is because of forest fires in Canada. So can you see that in front of, right there on the right, that used to be a conico? And I was saying to Jean, I wonder why that changed. What did it change because of? Did it change because it needed to change, or was it for some other reason? So this is a place that, remember, he worked quite far away. This is a place that Chris Watts, he would have done this exact drive many, many times. And he did it on the Saturday night as well. That's the store that he went into when he changed money. And when I was photographing the outside, I was thinking, I'm sure that was a Conoco. Why is it Exxon now? That's the inside of the store. We had quite an interesting conversation with the, I guess, the manager. I'm not going to repeat too much of what she said because it's not, how can I put it? It's not substantiated. for her to say, make certain claims, they are quite shocking. Yeah, but can you prove it? So I'm not really going to repeat what she said. But it was also quite weird to be standing exactly where Chris Watts was standing. You know, it was also quite strange. And then now we were on our way to the Lazy Dog. You can see it peeking out the side there. It actually ended up being a fantastic restaurant. The food was great, atmosphere was good. We stayed there for quite a few hours. We actually quite enjoyed it. Those are my thoughts as well, Kat. So also the same thing, driving towards the Lazy Dog, you're sort of thinking about Nicole Kessinger and Chris Watts. What were they talking about? What was on the radio? They were in her vehicle, if you remember, and I also said to Jean, I wonder if we can park in the same parking space that they did. It was actually very full. There was very little parking available. Anyway, there's that. The way he parked. Let me find exact parking that he used. Remember, he went in her vehicle. They went in her vehicle. He left in the Lexus. What's it, Shanann's car?
The Lexus.
He went in the Lexus, but they came here in.
Take away.
They came here in her vehicle. Seems like it's pretty damn busy.
It's very busy. And this is parking for the mall. And then, oh, this works out. That's a pretty good parking spot if there were a baby.
Yeah, this one. Can you believe that it's this popular? Should I park next to the other Jeep?
Sure.
Just jump, point it that way quick.
Oh. Yeah.
You can hit stop. So this was a sign on the Jeep next to the one we were in. And that's the inside of the restaurant. It was pretty busy, definitely was pretty busy. What was quite funny was there's a moment where a guy came up to us and I had two cell phones on top of each other. And he said, did you find an extra phone lying here? And you could see there were two cell phones piled on top of each other on the table. And I said, dude, both of these phones are mine. And then I sort of shifted in my chair and I found another one. So there's a third one next to me. And so he was pretty grateful for that. So there was a big, I think, basketball game going on, and that's why everyone was there. Don't ask me what the outcome was. That's the meal that Chris Watts ordered, the ginger soy salmon, and neither Jean nor I ordered that. We ordered something else. It was definitely pretty good. Definitely pretty good. Anyway, so that is it. That was our little trip to the Lazy Dog, and so it was quite interesting just getting a sense of the immediacy of the oil infrastructure. There's quite a lot to say about that, but then also the garbage collection was kind of helping Chris Watts do what he needed to do without him actually doing anything. That makes sense. He could count on that to remove evidence in a sense, right? Oops, sorry about that. So shall we go on to the next thing, which is JonBenet Ramsey? Are there any questions regarding what we just dealt with here? Any questions, any comments? Any thoughts? So I've got to tell you that my I had no idea about the garbage. Did you drive out to Survey Ranch? No. Do you believe these companies had an impact on the time? Absolutely, I do. So you know, like government agencies such as public prosecutor and the public defender, and the governor's office and all that. Those are paid for with with taxpayers' money, right? Guess where by far the bulk of tax income comes from in Weld County? Guess where the bulk of income comes from in Weld County? Nice to have context. Well said. Well said. It does bring back sad memories. Okay, so now I'm going to take you to the Ramsey home, and it's interesting to me that something. Let's have a look at the poll. Make sure you vote in the poll if you haven't already.
Annual insurance is the best kept.
So 50% say Chris Watts, 39% say JonBenet Ramsey. It's interesting, when I was in, I don't know, just while I've been in America, I've asked people about JonBenet Ramsey. I've mentioned her. And so often I just get blank looks. People don't know who or what I'm talking about, including in Boulder. And I found that kind of astonishing, that amnesia is set into the extent that it has. So before I deal with this in too much detail, I just want to share with you all the cases all the cases and characters I've actually dealt with in Colorado, right? Letitia Stalk, written a book about her. Patrick Frazee, written a book about him. I've also written a book on James Holmes, the guy who sort of had orange hair in the Aurora tragedy, right? So I didn't write a book about him, but he was one of the profiles I covered in Slaughter. So, but effectively that's a third narrative. Also studied the Columbine killings. That was also in Slaughter. So that's another one. Then I've written, I think, 11 books on JonBenet Ramsey, but let's just say that's the fifth different person. And then also Chris Watts, right? That's six. And then Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie came through Colorado. I think they were even in Boulder as well. There's a photo on Gabby's Instagram, I think, where she's in a coffee shop in Boulder, talking about how good the weed is there. And you also have at the Great Sand Dunes National Park. I went there as well. We're going to deal with that right at the end of this. But basically 7 high-profile cases in Colorado. That's quite a lot. I mean, California, there are quite a lot as well, but just shows you to what extent high-profile cases tend to come out of Colorado. And he made a really interesting comment. He said all of these people weren't local; they came there from somewhere else, and it's true. Letitia Stork came there from somewhere else. Chris Watts and Shanann came there from somewhere else. Kelsey Bereth came from California, the fiance of Patrick Frazee. Um, Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew came from somewhere else. And, like, I don't know if you guys know this, I went to their home on Puma Path near Salida in Colorado. And then I went to their home in Idaho. So I was sort of looking at where they came from as well, right, in terms of that. Um, Also look at Koberger. Koberger came from Pennsylvania. He went somewhere else, and then disaster struck. And I think that transplantation can be traumatic if you don't settle in, if you're not accepted, if there's not a sense of belonging and being at home, it can lead to problems. Interesting, right? Crazy how many cases. Chelsea says, I ordered the Craven Silence, can't wait to read it. So I think that's a good place to start. Is one of the one of the big insights, and people have laughed at us. Like Lisa Wilson and I co-wrote the Craven Silence trilogy, and one of the big insights that I've never seen anywhere else when we wrote our books or subsequently. I haven't seen it before. It's just something we came up with. I haven't seen it kind of close to the time when we wrote it, and I haven't seen it ever since. But we basically said that we felt that the fact that JonBenet and her mother both got bicycles may actually have upset Burke because it's kind of a big gift. And when you go to Boulder, it's hard not to sort of feel like I need a bicycle because there are bicycle paths everywhere, because you see people on bicycles everywhere. And although I knew this to be true, it was really startling when I arrived in Boulder. I've got to say, I've traveled through all sorts of cities in America. The, the trip to Salt Lake City, so to get to the airport of Salt Lake City, and then to fly to Denver, and then to get from Denver to Boulder, it was just tough, exhausting, difficult, and traumatic. Just bear in mind, you don't know either of these airports. You don't know what to deal with. I just found it like a real battle, quite stressful, just getting from that point A to that point B. But the amazing thing was when I arrived in Boulder, very spontaneously, I just got off the bus. I wasn't very happy, and I just was like, let me get off this bus and just get an Uber and just get myself sorted out. So suddenly I was standing in the middle of nowhere, kind of on the outskirts of Boulder, and suddenly it's just like the bus roars off, and I'm standing there with my bags, and I haven't pre-selected or premeditated where I'm going to be standing. I'm just standing there, and I'm sort of standing, and I'm sort of looking around, and then what happens? Someone passes me by. It's like completely quiet. Someone passes me by on a bicycle. 2 seconds later, 2 seconds after that, somebody else passes by in the opposite direction on a bicycle. And that continued for the next couple of minutes. Get into the Uber, drive a few minutes, pass someone on a bicycle, pass someone else on a bicycle, get to Buster J's, get to the hotel. People passing by on bicycles, get to Buster J's, bicycles, bicycles, bicycles. And so very soon you realize, well, this is a bicycling town. And you might say, I don't know why you're so obsessed with bicycles. Well, if you lived in Boulder, you would want a bicycle as well. There are bicycle paths everywhere. There are bicycle paths in front of the Ramsey home. There are bicycle paths circling the Colorado University. You're just constantly seeing kids on bicycles. When you go up the Flatirons, when you sort of drive up that road, there are people climbing and getting fit on bicycles. And so you can imagine when JonBenet gets a bicycle, but Burke doesn't. That can't feel terribly good. And the idea was that Burke would get a bicycle 1 month later. But how many kids can understand that sort of thing? You know? Sunny says, what's your idea of what happened to JonBenet? Well, you're going to be shocked when I say this. I don't believe JonBenet was murdered. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these images. There you can get an idea just how, in a weird way, the Ramsey home is a lot like the 1122 King Road. It's totally exposed to its neighbors. In a way, you can look right into the Ramsey garden and home from all sides. And so you'd be crazy as an intruder to want to somehow get in there because it would be so easy to see you. Lisa kind of, because Lisa and I co-wrote a couple of books, Lisa expressed her just feeling of sadness seeing the house so kind of neglected. This angle to me, let me make this full screen. This angle to me is quite important because I suspect that a bat was thrown out of this window here, either that window or possibly, or more probably that window. And the bat made like a clanking sound, possibly on there or somewhere over here. It could also have been on the other side, somewhere down there, but a bat was found over here, right, over there. But the neighbor said that they heard a clanking sound on concrete. And I've always wondered, was that the sound a bicycle made that turned over or was dropped, or more likely was it a bat that was possibly dropped out of a window? And there were two bats found outside. Apparently, both pairs belong to both bats belong to the Ramseys. One bat had a carpet fiber, basement carpet fiber on it. Sally says they found footsteps outside a window to the basement. Diane, you haven't read my books. You know, Jean was telling me what an incredible writer I am and what incredible, just, you know, your work is incredible. And then I said, wow, that's so great to hear. Which books have you read? She said, sorry, I actually haven't read any of your books. So don't worry about that. Thought Criminal says, I lived in a house in a cemetery in the UK. Oh, really? Linda, as far as I know, the house is now student digs. Can you believe it? Thanks a lot for that. I worked pretty hard on the What's blogs and the What's books. Okay, so let's go through a couple of more pictures. So when I came, so I went back to the Ramsey home like the next day, and a neighbor actually came out, and I kind of wanted to say to the neighbor, do you mind if I go a little along into your yard and just take a photo in? And she kind of had a look on her face where I thought if I said that, she'd say, yes, I do mind. I do mind if you do that. And it's so frustrating because I wanted to get a clear picture for where a bat may have been thrown out the window. And it's quite a niche area of the Ramsey case that I'm definitely quite interested in. And here's someone who lives right next door, and that's exactly what they're not interested in. I'm not asking questions. I don't want to know. Please leave. Don't be here. And so, you know, obviously out of respect, I didn't ask her. I did think if she came out again, because she had like a watering can in her hand, that I would ask her. But you can see how she's purposefully allowed the branches of this tree to form a kind of curtain as well. Normally this is in her yard. Normally you would say that that's a bit excessive, but she's trying to also block out the view of the house from her side. I must say, there's something about video that gives so much more life and immediacy to these scenes than just a picture. So, Thought Criminal says, can you refresh us about the 911 call that was made from the home the days before? So, on the 23rd, they had quite a big party. They had just kind of a party for the kids. That they sort of had Santa Claus was present and Santa Claus's wife. And he was specifically hired for that and paid for that. And that is when the kids actually made those gingerbread houses, which was still on the table 2 days later. And certain cards were read out and so on. And JonBenet apparently during this party was crying, and I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was is it Julie Phillips, the photographer? But somebody said that they found JonBenet, I think, sitting on a step just crying, and then she said, "Why are you crying?" And thanks a lot, Bazia. And then she said um, something about that she'd been told that she was ugly. And so there were a lot of little boys at that little event. I think Burke would have been there. Doug Stein, I think, was there. Fleet White's son was there. Fleet Junior, and a lot of little children were there. And then their parents as well. And so some of those people kind of became the original suspects. But anyway, what was really interesting with that call was when the police arrived, they wouldn't open the door. And Susan Stein was sort of like Patsy's pit bull, basically said, it's fine, don't come in, whatever, right? But look, you can understand can you imagine if there was a crime scene next to your home? Would you want, it's not just one person arriving there and taking a photo and then leaving and never coming back. It's an endless trickle. And each one brings with it a negative connotation, which means not only is the Ramsey house going to struggle to find a buyer, even now, 26 years later, but if you want to sell your house, it might be worth 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 25% less as well. That's the reality. And so that they kind of want it to be a kind of amnesia. But I think there's another way of dealing with it. One way is you change the house significantly on the outside, and another way is that you address some of the problems. You talk about it. You deal with it. You don't try and ignore it. You actually deal with it. Okay, let's continue. So that picture I took to, let me make it full screen. So when you see that image, what really stands out to me is how the distance from the road to the front door really isn't that far. Now, when you see it from that perspective, it might look like it's a great distance, but really isn't. The distance from the sidewalk to that wrought iron fence is really not a lot, and then from the wrought iron fence to the front door really isn't a lot either. And it was really interesting standing there because I've seen so many pictures of the original pictures where the house seems set so far back. And it's just a little bit of an illusion. I think because the house has got such a steep gable, it feels like it's further back than it really is. Something else that's quite interesting in this picture is, can you see that that window is open? Can you see that that window is open? And actually, that window is also open. That window there is also open. And I'm not sure if that's a curtain sort of jammed into the middle window, but because I know this case so well, I know that this is Burke Ramsey's room. This is originally Burke Ramsey's bedroom. And the bathroom is kind of on this side. And there's a window coming out over here as well. I also thought it was quite ironic that, and probably students put up these lights just like trying to decorate the place. But it's just ironic to me that this is the only true crime case besides Scott Peterson that basically plays out around Christmas Day. And yeah, right in front of you, you arrive there, and right in front of you are these Christmas lights on the almost like jail-like bars on the outside of it. I thought that was quite ironic. Brenda says, when did you take these pictures of the Ramsey house? Well, a few days ago. Okay, let's continue. Basia asked who I was talking to. Now I was talking to Jean, who's one of the mods on this channel and also one of the long-time supporters of this channel. So that's kind of what you see when you just approach the house. You just see branches and leaves and so on. And then that's the house behind it. So they've almost hidden it away. Of course, if you know where it is and you know what you're looking for, then you just go through all of this and then you can see it quite clearly. But this is their attempt to sort of hide the house away. Thanks a lot, Adam. I thought so as well. Thank you. So what was also quite strange was this statue of a dog. I don't know whether it's like a what do you call it, an epitaph or kind of reminder of a beloved pet, but I wouldn't be surprised. Bear in mind that JonBenet also had a pet that wasn't around when she died, right? She had a pet dog. Can anyone remember her name? Sorry, the name of the dog. Can anyone remember the name of JonBenet's little dog, which Patsy went on to replace? There you go. There was Jacques, and then there was Jacques 2, right? And Jacques 1 got sick and didn't do very well. Wasn't very well potty trained. Okay, and so that is the view just down the road. Bear in mind, the neighbors heard certain sounds. They apparently even heard a child screaming, and the child's scream cut off. I don't know if you guys remember that. Melody Stanton. That's the view up the road. One thing that surprised me being there was actually how steep this road was. I was under the impression it was just like a normal flat road, and it's actually quite steeply slanting upward. And as soon as you get to the corner, then you add a bicycle path. Yeah, there was a scream. Yeah, that's the other thing is the was it the Barnhills looked after JonBenet's dog, and unfortunately Jacques wasn't at home that night. Otherwise, who knows what could have happened? Could have been a situation like the Moscow case with with Kaylee's dog. So this is a kind of a side view into this part of the Ramsey home, and you can actually see just how many windows are in the home here. It's just windows, 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 lots and lots of windows. Now, you must bear in mind, in 1996, you wouldn't have had anything like this kind of cover over the house. And so it would literally be like a little bit, maybe even more like the 1122 King Road than 1122 King Road. Just windows everywhere, and you'd be able to see people moving around inside the house much clearer than actually even 1122 King Road. I was quite surprised by how little had changed. I think one thing that did change is they put a basketball net here while it had previously been by the garage. So again, this is Burke's room on this side. There's a play room over here, and then JonBenet's room is over here. There was also a room adjacent to Burke's room that was sort of empty and was basically kind of a trophy room for JonBenet. This is the neighboring property. You can see it's also quite neglected. And you can't see it that clearly here, but they've actually put all sorts of branches on the ground here to discourage people from going along this boundary over here. So there's been some effort made to. So this is a real fairy tale little house, beautiful little house taken care of. And then this is the corner. You can see to some extent how steep this road is, and there is the baseline 15th Street. And there is a bicycle path coming down or going up here. Right, that's a bicycle path. That's just around the corner from the Ramsey home. I think I've got some. Okay, so this is also something that you don't often see. It's the back side of the Ramsey home. and the fact that there's an alley going down the backside. So this over here would have been JonBenet's room, and this would have been John Andrews' room. Again, what you don't often hear about is this back alleyway running to the rear garage of the Ramsey home. This is the fence line. There's the Ramsey home. This is that alleyway going down there. So once again, this is JonBenet's room here. This is John Andrews' room. Yeah. Do I have that right? Or is it one up? There's also a very untouched area of the Ramsey home, this side. Again, just look how close it is to, and there's been a lot of talk that the intruder came in on this side. There's an open door, which you can see how ridiculous that is, because right next to the neighbors, the neighbors literally right there. Yeah, it does look quite out of context. Jean says it looks like she might rent it out to students. Wonder if she lives there too. So this is the some of the people staying there. So I think this is when I came back on another day. Can you see these branches that were put out here? These branches were put out here to discourage anyone from going kind of down there. Does that make sense? So this is a view across. Again, this would be Bergstrom sort of over here, right? And then that would be the playroom over here. Trying to see, is it over here? And then JonBenet's room sort of over here, in that section over there. Just trying to see where, I think the parents' room is sort of right at the top here. So Bergstrom would be here on the second floor, or on this floor. And then the playroom is here. And then there's another room that JonBenet did stay in. I think they called it the television room. I can't believe that I can't remember her name. What was JonBenet's stepsister's name? Was it Melissa? I think it was Melissa, right? Melissa Ramsey. I think they sometimes called it the pink room, the TV room, the trophy room. But JonBenet later went into another room. Anyway. Okay, so So in terms of the JonBenet Ramsey case, like if I just say, like so with the Chris Watts case, not that I didn't know about it, but it was quite interesting. Just that the whole trash collection thing on a Tuesday. That's a Chris Watts case. In the JonBenet Ramsey case, what what stood out? Like let's say, you noticed how many bicycles were in Boulder. You noticed it also Boulder just feels like such a different place compared to anywhere else. It just feels it's very, I don't know, it's very, you could sort of get the sense that Patsy would have wanted to belong to the folks in Boulder, and I think Boulder, Gene could corroborate this. Thanks for joining us, Lorraine. I think Boulder's relatively secular, and the Ramseys were pretty strong Christians, and just that on its own would make it a little bit tougher for the Ramseys to be assimilated into Boulder. What does Kathy say? Thanks a lot, Kathy. Appreciate it. It's a really good point. Linda says, could you see the basement window? Well, you could see from those previous angles that I tried to get it, but it's kind of got a bush in front of it. I mean, that is why I went back to try and get the basement window. And if you look, I mean, that is about as best as you can get the basement window. But can you see there's like a big bush in front of it? That's also done on purpose. Shall I do it like that? That's also done on purpose so that you discourage from seeing anything. And of course, the most important thing that you do want to see, you can't see because it's inside the house, is the basement. I mean, ironically, the basement is the only room in that entire house without a window. That's not for nothing. Marcel says, I need to start my day. I'll catch up later. Sounds good. Kat says Boulder was in the stand. So, it's hard to say everything because I mean you get like a storm of impulses that are sort of hitting you. You know, it was surprising just how close that star was to the Ramsey home. You remember on the night before Christmas, so Christmas Eve, they went to Pastor Jay's, and from Pastor Jay's they went to the star, and JonBenet wanted to get out, and I think her brother had gotten out and wanted to run around by the star, and I think her mother said she couldn't, and so JonBenet sort of sulked, but it is quite a steep section, and I wanted to go there myself, and there are all sorts of signs saying no trespassing. So I would have liked to have gone there, but the sign's not illuminated during the year. It was last illuminated after the King Supers thing, so yeah. So it's hard to, I mean, I could write it down and it would make for pages and pages, but because there is a lot of a sense of Boulder having a certain culture. What's also incredible is just how Boulder is like this and then like that, right? So it's like flat, and then suddenly it elevates with the flat irons. It's just incredible, it's just if you're looking in a particular direction, it looks like it's like a pancake. If you've got your back to the flat irons, it's as flat as can be, and then it's just suddenly it rockets up like that. Jean also says to me it snows virtually every Christmas. So this idea that, oh no, how could there have been snow on the day that JonBenet was found? Well, there was, it's more typical that there was snow than that there wasn't snow. And the amazing thing with the old snow narrative is theoretically they could have solved the JonBenet Ramsey case just if they had nailed down the snow evidence. Just that they could have solved the JonBenet Ramsey case just with that one thing. Just trying to think what else. What else sort of stands out? Yeah, Patsy definitely wanted to fit in. I guess for me the biggest insight really was going to the Ramsey home after going to 112 to King Road and just thinking just how sad it was that you've got these two. I think they're both beautiful houses. Like the house itself is beautiful, and wouldn't it have been such a shame if they demolished the Ramsey home? But the answer isn't to build. Sorry, the answer isn't to try to hide it behind trees and hope people forget about it. That's not the answer. The answer isn't to board it up and demolish it. That's not the answer. The answer is also not just to pretend it didn't happen like the Chris Watts house. To me, the answer is try and deal with it in a certain way. Like have, I don't know, you could to some extent have tours and have people that want to talk about it and think about it do that because that's going to happen anyway. Maybe collect all of that stuff on video and photos for posterity or whatever, right? So do that. That's important to do anyway. And then separate to that, you then manage this whole thing. You decide what you want, not what you don't want. You decide what you do want. And then you try and improve the house. You don't just break things down. You try to improve it, put a different coat of paint on it, change the facade in some way that makes it different to what it was, and also landscaping in the garden, and just change the whole thing, and turn a house that became bad memories for someone into a place potentially for good memories for somebody else. I don't think it's like it should be the fate of a house that when a crime happens there, it's got to be demolished or it should never be sold or whatever. I think people should make the effort. You can change some of it, and I think it's possible to do that. So it was really interesting seeing almost the attempts to bring about amnesia in Boulder and the failure to do that in a sense. Because, the bottom line is the Ramsey case isn't going to go away for as long as it's not talked about or solved in a sense of what did happen. I've always found it fascinating that, like, think about it, who is the person closest to JonBenet? In this whole story, who was the person closest to JonBenet? Who was the last person to see her alive? Wasn't it Burke? And yet you heard from his mother and you heard from his father and you hear from John Andrew, and you never really hear from Burke. Okay, so shall we go to the next one, which is Barry Morphew? I've got to say, when I went towards Salida, and when I was in Salida, I don't know, I just got extremely nervous. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. The terrain is tricky. The terrain is tricky. It was cold. I was wearing flip-flops. It was cold. It was windy. It was raining. I think my vehicle even got some damage due to hail. And then it wasn't all that easy finding Um, so Barry Morphew's home isn't in Salida. It's closer to Maysville, but it's not in Maysville either. It's sort of in the rural backwoods of Mays. Is it Maysville? Here it is, Maysville. It's not part of that little town. It's just outside of it. So this is basically on the way to Puma Path. And I happen to see quite a few of those all over the place. And those featured very strongly in the, was it the affidavit, the discovery? Good point. Another bicycle in another mystery. What can you do with a piece of equipment like that? So can you see there's a mine over here? Can you see that? So that's just around the corner from the Morphew home as well. There's water flowing all over the place as well. This is the drive. Well, there it is. Can you see the sign saying no trespassing? There's one of them. The house is a lot smaller than I thought it was. I actually thought I had some more material, but anyway, what was quite scary was the one time that I went down there, there was a white vehicle coming out, its lights were flashing. And I first thought it could be the police, but I mean, it's a public road. But I just felt, I don't know why, I felt quite nervous. I was really surprised to see so many no trespassing signs and signs saying effectively, do not get out of your vehicle. And I suspect that Barry put those up and the new owners, because it's been sold and, you know, it's got a new owner, left those signs in place. The other thing that was fascinating was I obviously drove from Boulder, which is right next to what was that site starts with a B, that Bloom something, that Barry went to do a work job there. Just can't quite think of the name now. Yeah, Barry did move, or Barry moved from Indiana to Colorado. I guess you're saying he moved back there. Yeah, so Broomfield is 10 miles from Boulder. So driving from Boulder to his home right? So in reverse is exactly the same way, 99% the same way that he would have driven when he was told something happened to Suzanne, come home now. And then it's about a 2.5 hour drive. I remember when I drove back from the Great Sand Dunes, and then you sort of go quite close to Salida again, and then you go all the way back to Boulder, but again, the same route you would go to Broomfield, except for the last 10 miles. There was very little cell phone reception. Jean was going to phone me just to, because I hadn't slept very much, just to keep me awake. And she couldn't get hold of me because the cell phone reception was so bad. And even the radio reception was weak. And so I had my phone on, like listening, playing YouTube videos, and it kept, that circle kept spinning because it couldn't actually pick up any signal. And so that trip from Salida to Broomfield basically meant that people couldn't see what Barry was doing. If he was doing anything wrong, you couldn't see what he was doing because there was so much area where cell signals couldn't be picked up. We do know that CCTV showed him apparently dropping garbage here, there, and everywhere. And also, what's quite surprising is at his home, there seem to be things going on all over the place as well. That's also quite interesting. That's besides his own vehicle showing stop, door open, door closed, stop, and so on. Yeah, it definitely was very isolated out there. To me, the Salida area was like Indiana plus mountains. It was similarly isolated, definitely more spectacular, but basically Indiana plus mountains. Also, Indiana with gravel roads, more gravel roads. Okay, so that then brings us to the Great Sand Dunes. So, I mean, I guess the insight that I got from the driving to Barry Morphew's home and driving back was just how many dead spots there were where you couldn't pick up any kind of signal. I was really surprised. I was really, really surprised. I was also, I kind of got a weird sense of, I'm not surprised that this case is unsolved because effectively the crime scene is, I mean, let me ask you a question. Where do you stop the perimeter of the crime scene tape in the Suzanne Morphew case? And that makes it quite complicated. Oh, so something else that I learned while I've been in America is probably one of the best people to talk to if you want to find out about someone's movements, someone's habits, someone's whatever. Go to the gas station closest to where they live, because that is likely a very likely place that they visit very, very, very often. And you kind of had that with the Chris Watts case. And there's a gas station right around the corner from Salida where I didn't actually ask any questions, but I was certain that, well, it's only gas station for miles. It's a Shell gas station. I wouldn't have been surprised if Barry filled up there more often than not. I'm just saying, if I was an investigator, especially in a somewhat rural area, one of the best places to get intelligence is a gas station, from the CCTV, but also from the person who works there. and it doesn't necessarily have to be rural, it can be any urban setting. There tends to be a gas station that's on your way. Think about yourself, a gas station that you tend to visit more often than not. That's going to give a lot of information away about your habits, about what you tend to buy, when you tend to buy it, what your movements typically are, what your movements typically aren't, right? Okay. And that then brings us finally to Gabby Petito. Now you might say, you know what, Gabby Petito is not part of Colorado. She didn't die in Colorado. It's not relevant. But she did go to the Great Sand Dunes. That's quite close to the end of their timeline, Gabby and Brian's timeline. Can you see just how beautiful this is? Like sometimes pictures can't capture what's actually going on, but can you see that these mountains are actually snow-capped? Can you see that? And so it had been not terribly lovely weather, very hazy because of the smoke, and then a big storm rolled through and sort of spattered snow all over these very high mountains. And if you look at the bottom here, this is going to become the Great Sand Dunes. If you look towards this way. The Great Sand Dunes are that way. It's kind of just a big sand pit at the bottom of these mountains. It's not like the Sahara that goes on and on. It's kind of like a dumping ground for sand that collects under this one set of mountains. But it was really hard to capture just how beautiful the setting was. Again, you've got this flatness, and then these mountains suddenly rise up, and they've got snow on them almost in June. It's really incredible. And it's really wonderful as a photographer, going out when you have storms like this. In fact, there'd been a big storm on the Great Sand Dunes just before I got there. So when I got there, it was actually the Great Mud Dunes. Well, sand that has been wet is still sand, but yeah, they weren't quite as golden as they should have been. I really love this photo. There's something epic about this picture. But part of why it's so epic is, can you see again the snow on the top of the mountains, right? And then the sand dunes are sort of in the distance there. There was actually a big storm about to break. It broke a little bit after I took this photo. There's a big storm that it actually obscured this area, big thunderstorm. And you can kind of see the Great Sand Dunes here starting out over there. I really do like this picture. In a big reason why this picture works are these power lines moving, helping create the perspective. I've gone very low on the ground to lift the mailboxes into the air, right? I'm crouching down, and then also the fact that the mountains have got snow on them just gives it that epic quality. But it's all these things together, the power line that keeps going, the mailboxes going low down the ground, the epic quality to the sky. You kind of got a bit of a crossroads of the sky as well. And yeah, I really just love this picture. I love how sunny and bright this part is, and how this part is kind of darker. Okay. So obviously when I was driving here, I was thinking this is the way that Gabby and Brian came. And, I was driving, this was one of the biggest one-day trips I did. I drove probably more than 8 hours. And, and it was just one day, and it was pretty exhausting. And I couldn't help thinking how much this trip must have cost Gabby and Brian, because I was just driving from Boulder and then back, and then I would fly from there to somewhere else, where they drove constantly. I think they drove from Florida to New York to westwards. They spent a lot of money driving. And, I took quite a lot of photos of things that I just found interesting, whereas they seem to stick to national park stuff. Isn't that a cute house? You can actually see right through it. And it's got this beautiful warm light on it. And again, the sky is helping create the perspectives that you want here. And so when you turn it into black and white, it really does look like a classic American landscape. There's another version of this very same scene with a road in it. Again, look at what an epic quality the clouds give it. And can you see the great sand dunes in the background? The great sand dunes are there on the left, you see. And you see how it's just kind of some sand that's sort of dumped into a corner of that mountain range. I love that question. What camera do you use? I use my cell phone. Thanks a lot, Lorraine. That's one of the best compliments I've had all day. Yes, I did. Aysen, have you just joined us? Kathy says that photo is something I'd frame. Kathy, you must make an order and I'll print it out and send it to you. Maybe I'll put this onto my Teespring. But that is a beautiful picture, isn't it? So this is coming right up to the Great Sand Dunes, and you can see it's the kind of image you need on a large format, right? You don't want this to be like a small little baby image. You really want to see the whole thing. And what I really love about this image is the late afternoon light emphasizing the shape of the dunes in front of these high mountains. And then you've also got some of those ribbons of color of the sand just in slight touches on the grass here. So for me, this is really a stunning picture due to the light as well. And of course, it's not only Gabby Petito who went to the Great Sand Dunes, also Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger. And so if you follow these strands and you just sort of go up in that direction, look what happens when we zoom in. Right, and then you've also got some ribbons as well, ribbons of snow going up there. And I think that the reason why you've got this sort of smokiness here is because it's just snowed again, and so some of the snow it's so fresh, it's just blowing off. This is like a freshly snowed peak. Look at that over there. So I don't know, it's just really lovely. This contrast, it's not something you often see. This kind of looks like a painting, doesn't it? But in a way, it looks surreal. Like if someone did paint it, you'd say, yeah, but nothing like that actually exists. So Chris Watts, not sure if it was Chris Watts or Nicole Kessinger, they took a photo of the Great Sand Dunes from this perspective, obviously with no snow in the background. Gabby took photos literally standing on the dunes. I did think of driving out to where Nicole Kessinger took some photos of her vehicle on like a powdery white road, but then I was sort of running out of light. The sun was sort of setting, and bear in mind I had to get back to Boulder, and so it was like 9 o'clock at night. I couldn't really continue what I was doing. Amazing, right? So this to me is really one of the most beautiful pictures I think I took that day. I'm not quite sure what I was saying there, but that's also quite an epic picture. Oh, by the way, thank you so much to Laurel. Thanks so much for that. I must tell you that today, although I'm staying in a wonderful suite, I wanted to go to a Korean restaurant, and I sort of had my navigator on. And when I got to the restaurant, it was sort of 10 minutes to 9, and they said, "Sorry, we closed." And I'm like starving. I mean, I didn't have lunch today. Um, so yeah, it's like dinner time, and I'm starving. Sorry, we closed. And then I went to another restaurant where they just took so long to serve me. I was like starting to get desperate. So when the server eventually came up to me, I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to order an Uber. Uber Eats. It'll just be quicker. And then in the end, I did eat there, and but I was just it's a terrible feeling when you're like desperate to eat. And anyway, I did eat in the end. So thanks a lot, Laurel. I will put that towards a nice meal. Thanks. What's frustrating with an image like this is everything's in the image, but can you actually see just how epic this is? You know, your camera's almost at ground level, and can you see where this river is coming from? It's coming from this kind of watershed here that's just had a storm sort of deluge all over it, right? And so that's where all of that water comes from, and so it's coming through in sort of waves. You sort of walk, and then and that's another reason why you want to wear flip-flops is you can feel the water over your feet. You can feel how cold it is. You can feel how silky it is. You can feel the sand as well. And anyway, so this was really an epic kind of environment, and you know you've got the sand dunes in front of it, but of course that's much taller than those sand dunes. And once again, the sky is incredible, and the sun was just setting at this point. Silent Murmurs is it's a holiday weekend here. Yeah, so probably a lot of people are like not working. Um, Mel Stiller says the vastness of it is mesmerizing. You know, and I couldn't like I kind of got this sense like you know when people think of Brian Laundrie, you know, it's understandable. When people, sorry, let's just do this. When people think of Brian Laundrie, they hate him and they hate his parents. And like I said, it's understandable. But what I think people maybe fail to think is they are in these exquisite environments, right? Two young people in these exquisite environments, they are absorbing them, they're sort of camping in them. Um, they have their own attitudes to nature that they want to protect nature. They don't want to drink out of plastic bottles. They want to eat natural food, and I do too. While I'm I want to also try and eat sufficient amounts of fruit and vegetables. Um, and I mean, within the context that you're driving a guzzling gas guzzler, but I couldn't kind of like shake the feeling the more that I traveled into Gabby and Brian's story. The more kind of epic it is becoming. Epic in the sense of what a big world we live in, how spectacular nature is, and how beautiful youth can appear. Beautiful blonde hair, a beautiful, whether it's a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, any couple that loves each other against these incredible backdrops. It's going to be hard not to feel feelings of love in that kind of environment. Anywhere that's just a special environment is going to awaken strong feelings in you, right? And I'm sure that did happen with Brian, and I think Brian, in a way, I think couldn't believe his luck, or I don't know how to put it, but I think when you look at the video of Brian and Gabby, Gabby was prepared to marry Brian. So Brian was experiencing something that I think in flashes and in moments and temporarily was legitimately beautiful. And then he wanted to hold on to that. He wanted to keep that. He wanted to control it. He wanted to, I guess, close the contract. And I think he thought it was slipping through his hands. I think he felt, so in other words, he's in love with Gabby, but he's realizing just how kind of incredible she is and how incredible this is, these environments. And meanwhile, cracks are starting to form in their relationship. Look how expensive this trip is, and they can't afford it. But more specifically, he can't afford it. Look how nice this is, and let's do that, but they can't afford it. It's one thing to travel from one place to another. It's another thing when you're in a place, but you can't afford, like I've been to Jackson Hole and I've been to Moab and it was totally different. Like I could have afforded to do mountain biking. I could have done this or that. And I mean, I did go whitewater rafting. It was more a question of time that I didn't do certain things. But I could really get a sense that Gabby and Brian couldn't do those things because they didn't have the money to do it, because it wasn't their money. They were getting money from their parents. And as much as I appreciate how big America is, having traveled through it for 2 months, I've made a lot of plane trips. And I think they may have underestimated, like you might say, if you take your time traveling through America, that's the way to do it. But that's also going to make it a lot more expensive. If you not at home, then you've got to find your food somewhere. And every time you move from A to B, that's fuel. And Gabby and Brian were selling their own clothing just before they left Florida to make money. And so I'm just trying to say, like just going to the Great Sand Dunes and coming back, just in terms of time, was very expensive for me, right? I'm not talking about money, I'm just talking about time. Um, it was like I got to Salida and I was like, do I really want to go to the Great Sand Dunes? It's another hour and then another hour back. Do I really want to do that? And it was actually the gas station attendant at Salida that said, I'm from there. You really don't want to miss this. And I'm really glad I went. But what I'm trying to say is, you know, um, I'm one person and I kind of have a job and I'm flying here and there, right? Whereas Gabby and Brian, neither of them really had jobs. And they were driving the entire way and they were also sleeping in their vehicle. I've been sleeping in hotel rooms. I don't think I've camped once. I wouldn't mind camping once or twice, but they were camping literally all the time. And so one of the biggest insights that I had with the whole Gabby Petito thing was, especially when I was in Moab, it was incredibly hot. It was incredibly hot in May, and like you couldn't imagine how hot it must have been in August, June, July, August. You couldn't imagine, like, I would I've gone to a lot of trouble to wash my clothes, I mean, I did it last night, to launder my clothes, right? And, and that's still not in a camping situation. I just I just can imagine how dirty and uncomfortable and expensive and how much time a lot of this would have taken, right next to it being incredibly epic. So in other words, you're getting this fairy tale of Bryce Canyon is incredible. The Arches National Park, incredible. Great Sand Dunes, incredible. Santa Monica Pier, incredible. All of these, the Grand Tetons, amazing. All of these incredible and beautiful things, but within the context of limiting things and aggravating things and things that are out of your control. So, in the midst of a fairy tale, a nightmare, if that makes sense, things that are so wonderful and so beautiful, but within the context of a certain amount of despair. And, you know, the best way I can kind of describe it is I'm I'm also having incredible time on a much lower scale. I mean, I'm just driving around. I'm curious. I'm looking at things, taking some photos every now and then. I'm like, geez, you nailed it. That was an epic shot. The light's incredible. Wow, this is amazing. But within that context, I'm extremely tired. Like, here or there, I haven't slept very well. And now I have to get from this point to that point, right? And I'm extremely tired. And there were times on my drive back where I literally stopped next to the road and I just tried to sleep. I was so tired. And I wouldn't say that's a nightmare, but that's the thing that you dealing with. And I mean, it's just me. If you were with somebody else that's either not tired or they're even more tired, like what do you do in that situation? And that can kind of aggravate as well. Just being tired, just continuing on this journey, and there's a constant insufficiency. I don't know. For me, I can understand how extremely expensive, costly this trip would have been for Gabby and Brian. Not just fuel, but meals, going on and on and on. I can kind of get that. But within that, this thing of like you can see how Brian probably had this exquisite connection with Gabby, that was kind of driving him crazy. Like the idea that he would have to go without that, the idea that like they would argue and there'd be this thing of, I hate you and I don't want to have anything to do with you. And then when that reality sets in, there's this sort of desperate love. It's not like this, it goes from this exquisite, Gabby almost seems high in some of those tent pictures, tent videos. She talks about the weed being so good in Colorado. That's an aspect of the case that I don't think's been really appreciated. There's a sense of them going through these landscapes, not just wowed and awed, but also high. And I think that then makes it so much harder to deal with the slings and arrows when things aren't going very well. How do you deal with that when you're not used to dealing with things not going right? The test of life isn't when things are going right; it's when things are going wrong. And so that would also have intensified those feelings Brian felt of kind of ecstasy almost. And so that the ecstasy is so incredible makes the despair and the disappointment and the loss almost unbearable. And that's the sense you kind of get, is that he couldn't bear it, he couldn't deal with it. But also that Gabby couldn't either. When they were both happy, they were both incredibly happy. When they were unhappy, they were both incredibly unhappy as well. By the way, I met a guy at, sounds terrible. I was eating at a place called Outback last night. Well, actually, I ate there twice because they had so many vegetables. Such good vegetables. So there was a guy serving me that wore a mask, quite a young guy. And I said, "Why are you wearing a mask? Was there like an incident here? Have you had COVID?" And he said, No. I wear it because of my anxiety. And I thought when I go back to that restaurant, I want to talk to him and just say, you know what, you're gonna have to deal with life one day without a mask. And the sooner you learn how to deal with it, the better. And then when I went back, he wasn't there. But the point being, the longer he hides behind that mask, the longer he uses that mask to feel comfortable in lieu of his anxiety, the harder it's going to be for him to not use it. Anyway. As far as I know, the final destination was Oregon. They were making it to their grandmother's home in Oregon. Yeah. Don, I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying there. Do you believe Gabby was naive enough to make apparent? I think she probably did express her concerns to Brian, and he didn't know how to deal with it. I think she was a bit more emotionally mature than he was. The other thing that I think put enormous pressure on Gabby and Brian was the fact that they didn't get married. So it's like they were engaged and they were about to get married, and then they just didn't. And I think that was actually driving Brian crazy. So I think Brian in a way felt like the luckiest guy in the world, right? But sorry to laugh, but I think really shouldn't be laughing, but that sort of turned into him feeling like the unluckiest guy in the world because he wasn't able to seal the deal. I think he could feel that he was losing Gabby, right? And he was. But I think the engagement thing made it feel like a lose-lose for Brian. It was like, I got her, but no, I don't have her. And for Gabby, I don't think it was such a big deal that the engagement wasn't happening. I think she was more concentrating on making things work, like she's trying to get a job. And I think if Brian was more, and you can understand why he wasn't, because it would be hard not to be as fixated as he was on what he was fixated on. But um, it's unfortunate that Brian wasn't trying to find some way of making himself useful, and it is a tough deal. It takes a lot of maturity to support someone else's social media that's all about them, and try and see that as a joint enterprise. Um, I think that can be quite difficult to do. But I think if you see that a joint income can be made out of that, and that you are, even though you're behind the scenes, then it's okay. But easier said than done. The other thing is, I just don't know how Gabby was going to make any money out of her social media the way they were going. They were doing far too little. I don't know whether they thought they were going to get sponsored, but they were doing very, very little, if you think about it. There were very few Instagram posts. I don't know if it is, I don't know how easy it is to monetize Instagram compared to YouTube, but I mean, YouTube, they were even further from anywhere. So if that trip was meant to set up their social media as an income stream, 2 months into it, they really hadn't achieved much. And so that's another pressure thing that I think was starting to hit them very late into the journey. I think they should have had their social media set up and going, from day one. And I totally understand the difficulties they've had, because I've had those exact same difficulties. You, in a certain sense, you spend the day, like if I take the day that I went to the Great Sand Dunes, part of that day is to get content, to take photos, right? And then you come back, and at the end of the day, you're exhausted. You don't, that day that you did all of those things, you spent a lot of money, you drove a long distance, you get home at past 1 or 2 in the morning, then you go on to the next spot, and then, well, what happened to all that work that you did? Well, I'll deal with it later, and so it goes on, right? You see what I'm saying? So although you're working, it's so time, because America's so big, it's so time consuming getting from A to B to C, that you kind of need a plan where you say, at this point we need to stop and put something out there, and it's got to be kind of a coherent plan. I haven't really needed to do that, because I've already got my social media set up, and I set a goal for myself, and I've already achieved those goals. It was totally different for them. They were setting something up from scratch, and so yeah. But I mean, it's easy to say that in hindsight. By the way, I must definitely thank Don. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That, Don, I think that is the biggest super chat I've ever gotten. So I don't know. I feel like my bum is in the butter right now. Don, I don't know if you've seen where I'm staying. I'm staying in this awesome apartment. It's actually like an executive suite. Let me show you my bedroom quickly. Quite nice, right? Bathroom. I'm going to be jumping in that bath quite soon. There's a nice some food over here, and I've obviously guzzled it. But anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm just saying that the social media side, I really understand in terms of Gabby and Brian, it's not easy. Even as someone who knows social media and is quite disciplined, it's difficult. It's difficult. You're traveling distances. It takes time. Whenever you're somewhere new, you've got to find a place to stay. You've got to find where you can buy food and right. And if you fussy in any respect, it makes it even harder. So when I arrived in Charlotte tonight, I wanted Korean food. I was a little bit fussy. I find the Korean food restaurant, but it closed 10 minutes after I got there. And that just creates that thing where you sort of waste time. And now you can't eat there, and then you go somewhere else that you didn't really mean to go to, and then you got to wait. And the whole time I'm thinking, yeah, but I really want to do a live tonight, and I need to do a live tonight. I'm just saying, when you're in a succession of unknown, unfamiliar environments, it complicates content creation, to put it simply. Yeah. Maureen says, I hope you can relax and recharge. I'm definitely going to have a good sleep tonight. I'm going to have a good bath. Are there any more photos I can show you of Gabby? Let me just see. Let's do this. I think I've got a couple, not of Gabby, but of the Great Sand Dunes. While we had almost 2 hours, 20 minutes. Let's see if I can play the audio. I don't know what Gabby and Brian encountered when they went to the Great Sand Dunes. As far as I know, this river flows constantly. But this was, to me, so magical. The Great Sand Dunes kind of look like a desert. And yeah, you got this water flowing through kind of the desert. Right. And it was just so unexpected that I just found it fascinating, and I love the way the water and the light at the end of the day. I love the patterns that it made, and so that was, to me, more magical than the actual sand dunes. Yes, I went to the Spread Creek camp. I didn't get right to the exact spot where he was. I got to, I was near the Spread Creek camp, so I was at the Grand Tetons. But if you really wanted to go down that road, you couldn't, because it was snowed over and the road was closed. Thanks so much, Lorraine. Gwen, I think that's 100%. I think Gabby was starting to feel ambivalent. And Brian was starting to feel more and more desperate. And the problem was Brian wasn't powerful, and Brian couldn't take care of her. Gabby was more in the leadership role than I think he was. That's a kind of end of day shot through the Jeep window. Sabrosa light. Thanks, I will do that. Thank you. Mel says my tablet is sending off very incorrectly spelled words. Sorry about that. Elise says, good to see you, Elise. Says, I think she really loved Brian, but he was treating her terribly. Yeah. I also think so. I think she loved him, but he was too insecure, right? I mean, I think Brian, in some part of himself, realized he wasn't good enough for her. He wasn't going to be good enough for her, something like that. And I think maybe that was a problem, that he was mollycoddled. I don't think two artists necessarily get along. I think one person needs to be the artist, the other one needs to be kind of like a manager. Like I don't know if like generally I don't think you can have two creative people together. And I also think she was more creative than what he was, a lot more. So that's the final image. Someone described this road almost like a zipper. I think that's quite a good description. The amazing thing about these photos are how these photos don't do justice to actually being there. Reality was a lot more beautiful than these photos. I find it so disappointing sometimes when you see a flower or you see the U over the horizon and the camera just won't see that. It's like, no, that is not what it looks like. I mean, you can see here, it's like this horrible yellow. That's not what it actually looked like. It was a much softer, fainter purple. But the camera just can't figure out what's going on. That's a little bit better on this side. That's a little bit better on the side here, but still not quite what it was. That's why you need an artist. You needed Van Gogh to be sitting there and recording those pictures. So the last thing I want to say is going to sound quite silly maybe, but I've lived fairly frugally the past 2 months in America. I've traveled, I've stayed in very humble little inns, and one place didn't even have a refrigerator. Not that that's roughing it, but I've stayed in fairly humble places. Here and there, I've had luxury. Lisa Wilson allowed me to stay in a Marriott, I think, right in the beginning in Irvine, using her points, something like that. But I don't know, there was something special about coming here. I didn't know I was going to stay in the executive suite. I thought I'm just getting a room somewhere in the Hilton. And so to come into, I don't know if I've ever stayed in an executive suite in my life. I mean, I really don't think I have. I'm on the 21st floor, and the 22nd floor is like a VIP lounge, and I don't think I've ever been in a VIP lounge in a hotel either. And there was a small part of me that allowed myself to feel kind of just a bit of a sense of well done, or that someone out there, one of you, recognizes me, hopefully the real me, hopefully the me for who I am, and has basically said, this is for you, we acknowledge you, we thank you, we see you, like in Avatar, I see. And I don't know, it was just a really lovely moment. I've felt a little bit blue here and there. Where do I belong? Where is home? This, that, and the other thing. And it reminds me of that scene in A Beautiful Mind. I think you'll know what I'm talking about when I mention it. Remember where Professor Nash has sort of made a royal fuck up of everything, and he's sort of lost his marbles, and then he ends up just going back to teaching, even though they say, what, you're a terrible teacher. And he goes back to teaching, and then one day someone knocks on his door, and he says to one of his students, half in jest, he says to her, is this guy really standing here? Like, am I imagining it, or is this guy really standing here? And the next thing, he's taken into a room, and he's honored for some of his research being used for I don't know, economic theory and whatnot. And he said, what, I wouldn't even have thought of that. Like, this idea that I had, and this whatever, somebody else came along and took this formula and applied it. I wouldn't even have thought of that. And anyway, he then won, and it's a true story, he won the Nobel Prize. But he's so, first of all, he's so modest, but in a almost from a position of, I don't want to say ignorance, but just of, to some extent, a simple modesty. It's not like trying to be modest. He just is modest. And then from there, he's honored for his intelligence, when for a lot of his life he was worried that there was something wrong with him, and that he, anyway, A Beautiful Mind was a movie that I loved because of the woman that stood by him, Jennifer Connelly, and the fact that at the end of this difficult journey, people realized, wow, you actually knew what you were talking about, when he seemed like such an idiot all along. I don't know, that movie really touched me. And there's a little bit of that when I walked in here, where I sort of felt just a little bit of a sense of, wow, you know what I mean? It really, it was a feeling I needed to feel, and it was an unexpected feeling. Of course, after that, I went to a Korean restaurant, and they closed the door in my face. But it kind of made me think, if only Van Gogh had that experience, if only someone had sort of shaken his hand and said, to this poor artist who was struggling, I can see who you are, I can see what you're doing. It's wonderful when people are acknowledged, their efforts are acknowledged, wonderful. But how many people's efforts aren't acknowledged? How many people are misunderstood ultimately? Do you know what I mean? So anyway, I'm just very grateful for this little moment. And yeah, no, it's been very good to, I really just wanted to share this with a lot of people. So I've phoned home, and I've phoned web, and I've reached out to a lot of people, and ultimately, I guess the live was the right way to do it. But I mean, I also am very grateful to you guys that it's thanks to you that I'm traveling through America as well. You, as in everyone watching, but also the collective, the TCRS collective. So I really am grateful. Thanks for that. Thank you, Lisa. Some of you guys made incredibly kind offers, but I just didn't get round to accepting them. I was on a tightly schedule that was based on certain efficiencies and certain trying to tick certain things off. And so I don't know, maybe I'll be back next year. I mean, Charlotte, North Carolina is my last stop before New York, and then I'm heading back to South Africa. But when I return, and I will return, I still haven't gone to Florida. There's more to see and do there. And I'm trying to think what other states. I still need to go to Texas. I still want to spend more time in Washington. Seattle, I really just breezed through. Oregon, I also just sort of breezed through. California, I could definitely spend a lot more time there. I didn't even get to San Diego. I've written about Rebecca Zahau, and the lawyer in that case has reached out to me, so I would certainly want to go back there. Tennessee, didn't get around to that. As much as I did see things in certain states, like I felt like every place I went to, I felt like, but these are all the things I didn't do, which is so strange. Would I visit Skid Row in Los Angeles? If someone held my hand and went with me. Esther says, hi, everyone from Switzerland. Good to see you. By the way, something I really want to do is climb Mount Rainier. Is that the word? Outside Seattle. That is something I really, really want to do. I don't have to get to the top. I'd just like to be on that mountain. It just seems like a stunning, stunning mountain. Hawaii, definitely. In fact, I was thinking of, can't I quickly just nip across from California to Hawaii? Yeah. Have I thought of leaving South Africa? I've left South Africa before. I lived in South Korea for a while. I lived in the UK for a while. That was on a temporary visa. I went to Australia with express purpose of, or thinking that I might move to Australia. I've been seriously thinking about moving to Portugal, to be honest. But I don't know. It's not something I really. It becomes too much thinking about that while there's so much else to think about and do. Terry says, thank you all for spending part of your Memorial Day weekend with TCRS and with us. I just want to say that it's something I also said to Jean. I say quite often is that we need to be creating real communities. And I've really been impressed by how much community I've seen and experienced in America. When you say thank you, people genuinely say you're welcome. I find that little thing so charming. Thank you. You're welcome. When I was driving through Indiana, there were so many kids' birthday parties on the side of the road. There were yard sales on the side of the road. There were people doing, I don't know, like playing the fiddle or just, I don't know, and just all over you saw Americans coming together. When I drove past the graveyard near the Menonhai Bridge, there were like American flags all along it. There were people visiting graves in that graveyard. there were little towns right through Indiana where you go through the towns and there's posters on every street post with a face on it and a name on it and a flag with it. And I don't know, it was just so, I'm almost going to cry. I was just so kind of overcome with the fact that you guys recognize one another, fallen soldiers that did something for your country. You know what I mean? The fact that you remember these real people. I don't know. I can't think of any other country that does that. And I really think it's wonderful. Yeah. I served in the military. I know in South Africa, a lot of my countrymen died fighting across the border wars, whatever. I just think it's such a great thing to take a day and say we appreciate what you did for us, and put a face there and put a name there, And if you're not in America, I think what one can maybe do is think about the people who've died in true crime, right? Like on that specific day, I don't know, like, do you know what I mean? Think about the people who were like the innocent victims in true crime, and so often they are little girls or women, right? Who paid a price, and maybe society has improved as a result of that. I would like to think that. I don't know if it's true, So maybe if you not in America, then Memorial Day for us should be where you think about Gabby Petito, Meredith Kercher, JonBenet Ramsey. We don't forget about that house with the trees around it. And all of those victims who can't speak, who can't say anything. Do you know what I mean? To my shame, I must say, I've never actually visited my mother's grave. To be honest, I don't feel like she's at her grave. Like if I went to her grave, that's where she would be. But I do think of her constantly. So I'm just saying that I think it's such a great thing that I'm just saying all over America I have experienced incredible community. I spent a couple of minutes at the Indy 500, and I don't think I've ever seen so many people in one place. I wasn't there for very long, and it's not my kind of thing, but I don't know, I've just found America's got a lot going for it. It's a choice not to argue amongst yourselves about, where one person belongs to this group and that person belongs to that group. Yeah, so I don't know, like I'm as I said, I'm really impressed by the community that already does exist in America. Really am impressed with it. Two hours, 39 minutes. I didn't go to Chicago. I did see a few signs saying Chicago, Chicago is just around the corner. That's why I say I'm constantly like, I'm not seeing this, I'm not seeing that. I was right around the corner from Las Vegas. I didn't go to Vegas either. Yeah, that's, I understand what you're saying. Think about the missing too. Think about Summer Wells, Suzanne Morphew. Yeah. Barry's job is someone who he changes landscapes. He's a landscaper. You literally gouge the earth and you reshape the earth, and it's quite physically, it's physical grinding and breaking and pushing, and you know what I mean. And even John Ramsey was doing, what do they call it? He was renovating, I guess, the basement, which also involves tearing out walls and doing that. Durst's family were real estate developers, right? And there's something violent sometimes in when you change the shape of the earth and land and buildings, right? And yeah, it's hard not to think about that, tearing down walls and this, that, and the other. And then what happens to some of the victims in these stories? Yeah, Shadow Bell. Alina says, I agree, Memorial Days, I think of my parents who have gone. Thanks so much, Susan. Thank you. I occasionally will take that and go, yes. Yeah, it's definitely it's a special moment, definitely. I'm actually I'm leaving here tomorrow. So although I've got this citadel and it's this throne room or whatever it is, I'm leaving tomorrow. I think I'm gonna shed a tear or two. Like when the door closes, I'm gonna. But the good news is I'll be back a little bit later for one more night, and so I think um, I'm going to be on time for the Korean restaurant, and I'm going to be doing another live on I think Indiana with you guys if you want me to. Can either do Indiana or Utah. They both, yeah. Must say when I just think of the different states, it's like, wow, incredible. Wow, that was also incredible. It's really been an incredible 2 months. I've learned a lot. I've grown quite a lot as a person. I'm a bit more of a confident driver. Don't know if you guys remember me when I was in California. Touch wood, though. Touch wood. I'm still trying to make sure I don't make any mistakes as a driver. But you definitely grow when you travel. You definitely grow. You grow in confidence, but you also grow in a sense of place. Like the world is this big, and I thought I was that big, but actually I'm that big, kind of thing. You know, you grow in a sense of proportion. Thanks so much, Suzanne. Okay, so I'm going to read the last couple of comments, and then I'm going to sign off. I just want to thank the mods in here. Terry, thanks a lot for being here. Terry, of course, joined me and Iceland. Well, it was first just me and Terry from Seattle through Oregon into sort of California. We visited this incredible beach with a lighthouse on it. That was really one of the most spectacular beaches I think I've seen. It was really quite something. It kind of felt like an alien planet in a way. Silent Murmur said, I think people may have confused the location of Gabby's grandparents with the location of the friend she was meeting. Yeah, well, she was gonna meet Rose for her 21st birthday, and I don't think Brian was terribly happy about that idea. And Rose, I don't think liked Brian very much, kind of rightfully so, right? Thanks, Blue Stone. Thank you. New Mexico. Yeah, I mean, I was like, should I go to Santa Fe and so on? Kathy says, I want you to see Timmy. I've actually got a nice photo of Timmy that I could share with you. I wonder if I can share it quickly. Got a nice picture somewhere here of Timmy. It's not that one, but it is, yeah. Anyway, this was Timmy on a walk not that long ago. Where is, there's a picture of Timmy on a walk not that long ago. And which one is Timmy? Let's see how well you guys know Timmy. Which dog in that picture is Timmy? So you can see Timmy is being taken care of. Carolyn says, sorry I missed the live, but I'll go back and check it out. So nice to know you enjoyed your visit here. Didn't Brian's mother write a book? No, she wrote like a letter. Oh, you mean a book? I'm not sure. No, he is the one jumping. He is the one on the left. That's right. Mount Rainier is magnificent. I'd love to do Mount Rainier. No, it's not the dog sitting on the ground. It's the one on the left. Anyway, Timmy's going to be seeing me in less than a week. So quite a scary thought. But I must say it was quite cold today landing in Charlotte. Definitely quite cold. Cold and rainy. Hopefully the weather improves. And then at the end of all of this, there's New York again. So I want to extend an invitation to you guys. Those of you who are close to New York, I want to go to the Statue of Liberty. And so if you want to join me, if you're in the area and you want to join me and whoever, we can go as a group and go and check out the Statue of Liberty. Anytime between the 2nd, 3rd, 4th of June. So whenever we can get the maximum together, we can go on that day, hopefully a nice weather day. And Ground Zero, as you say, that's somewhere else I need to check out. Okay, thanks guys for being here. Barthia says beautiful scenery. I love to drive with glorious scenery in passing. Judy says, imagine knowing your dear one is with a creep. Yeah. If you went to Seattle, would like to hear your commentary of Sky King. Okay. Staten Island. I may partake. Okay. I love New York in June. I love the movie The Fisher King. Isn't that set in New York? Two great actors. Gwen says, please record your reunion with Timmy when you get home. I will. I'm just scared he's like, oh, phew, and then sort of runs off, but we'll see. I will do that. It's a pleasure, Mel. Thanks a lot for joining us. Yeah, it's too bad, but maybe next time. I do want to go back to Boulder. I missed the what's that cowboy's name? It's not Billy the Kid. Starts with a B. I can't think of his name. There's a museum dedicated to him. Buffalo Bill. I missed the Buffalo Bill Museum. Lisa Brex, thank you so much, and I hope you're doing well. And I owe you a coffee in Seattle sometime. If I come through again, yes, definitely. Cool boats. I must take a boat in Seattle, that's for sure. Thanks a lot, Don. Don, are you still in Ukraine? Karina, thank you very much. Timmy, yeah. Okay, guys, yeah, Buffalo Bill's grave is in Boulder. Did you guys know that? Chelsea says, I wish I could go to New York. I have to work. New York at Christmas is great too. Well, you never know. Thanks so much. Not there yet. Thank you. And on that note, I just want to thank you guys Thank you to Laurie for this wonderful spot. I want to thank you guys for your wonderful super chats, but just also for your support and your interest. It's really nice knowing that you guys are out there, and really appreciate it. So you guys probably know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I'm going out to Moselle and Beaufort and those sort of places, weather permitting, and then I'll show you guys what I see and share some of my thoughts in terms of that as well. So I will be back right where I am now at this desk in a couple of days. So keep your eyes peeled. Again, thanks so much for the super chats. I hope you have a great rest of your Memorial Day and Memorial Day weekend. Again, really appreciate all of you, and take care. See you guys next time. God bless.